Nancy Pelosi, her husband, Paul Pelosi. Several controversial, sort of well-timed purchases, multi-million-dollar investments in NVIDIA and Google. He always seems to be in and out at the right time, okay? And over their 37-year career, I think Paul has amassed, or their family has amassed $130 million in stock trading profits. And they have a 17,000% return compared to the average S&P return of 12%. Welcome to episode 97 of the Weekly Docket, a podcast by the Silberman Law Firm, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is November 20th, 2025. I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm and your host, and I'm joined by Chris Heald, who's my co-host and supervising attorney. Chris, Thanksgiving fact, or trivia question, do you know the president of the United States that instituted Thanksgiving?
No.
Okay. It was Abraham Lincoln, and it was right after the Battle of Gettysburg in the middle of the Civil War. It was done to help unify the country, okay? But that's not all of our interesting trivia. Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, he actually changed the date sometime later because he was in the middle of the Great Depression, and the owner, the department store Macy's, was lobbying him to change Thanksgiving to make it earlier to get more of the Christmas shopping season in to stimulate the economy. So FDR actually changed Abraham Lincoln's date, made it a little earlier. It was confusing. It actually divided the country, ironically. And some people that were not fans of FDR, they called it Franksgiving, and they celebrated the original Abraham Lincoln Day for some time. And then the people who were fans of FDR, they celebrated the new date, okay? And then fast forward to 1941, Congress said, enough of this. Thanksgiving will henceforth be the fourth Thursday of November, and that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving on the fourth Thursday of November. So now,
how have I never heard that? I am shocked. I also didn't know it was on the fourth Thursday of November. I thought it was the third Thursday of November. I'm all mixed.
I'm glad I could enlighten you. Let's talk about what's on our docket today, okay? The first thing we're going to do is some legal questions. We're talking about how do you amend LLC docs and why might you want to do that? And then we'll talk a little bit about commercial lockouts and why they work well for commercial spaces, but don't seem to do well for residential spaces or residential properties. And then finally, in our Rant and Rave section, we'll talk about why members of Congress are so rich and a new law act proposal to stop that. Okay. Let's go ahead and kick it off with our legal questions section. How do you amend an LLC? First of all, Chris, what might some reasons be that you want to amend your LLC documents?
I think the most common is if you have an ownership change. I think that's what we see most commonly. You want to have corporate docs that reflect that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's usually we get the call, hey, I'm going to get a new owner, or hey, I'm an employee and the previous owner is selling it to me, or I'm just buying an LLC entity. Yeah. How do you amend it? It's pretty simple. Everything out of a LLC arises out of contract. So you do it in the operating agreement. And when you form an LLC, most LLCs have an operating agreement. It's not required, but then what you do is you amend it, you update the new ownership percentages, the new members, and you just put on top of it the first amended operating agreement. You can have second amended, third amended, fourth amended, and so on and so forth. One key point, a lot of people get confused. If you don't actually have to change the certificate of formation, do you ever get that question from new attorneys or clients?
I do. That was going to be my question for you. Do you file a certificate of amendment at that time?
No, you could, and you do see some people do that, but it's not necessary, not actually appropriate. The certificate of formation is just frozen in time as the original members, whether that's a corporation for maybe a board of director or an LLC. And then as board members or governing persons like managers in an LLC or owners like members, that takes place in the operating agreement. So you absolutely do not have to change the certificate of formation. You can do that, and the state of Texas will gladly take your filing fee.
Well, how does that jive with the public information report?
Well, your public information report discloses your governing persons. And in an LLC, your governing persons are either members or managers. So every year on your PIR, your public information report, you just put who, if you're a corporation, you put whoever your new board members are. If you're an LLC, you put whoever your new managers are or members. That's why if you really want an anonymous LLC, you don't want it member managed because you're having to update your members in the public records every year. You want a manager managed, and then your manager is someone, maybe a friend that doesn't own anything or an attorney, and their name goes in the public record. So that's how that works. Yeah.
Okay. I think we've discussed that before, but hit exactly what I was thinking, because we do get that call a lot. People say, okay, I want to form it this way. And so they have a name on the certificate of formation, and then they want to amend, and they say, do I have to disclose if I'm going to change the membership when I do that? And so, like you just said, no, but there is the annual reporting, and that is required to update that. And so at some point, you're always going to have to update that. But again, an issue I know we've talked about before, the way you did the same on the public front is just to have it manager managed, and you keep the same managers, and then you can change the members all you want.
Yeah, that's the best way to do this. All right, next legal question, commercial lockouts. Let me phrase this question maybe in a different way. If I'm a client, I'm calling you and I say, hey, I own an office building and one of my tenants isn't paying rent. Would you please evict him? What is your typical, I know what my answer is. You could evict him, but that's not usually what we do. Tell me what you might tell them.
Yeah, in commercial, the much easier course of action is to just lock them out. When we think about residential, everybody knows that the protections for residential are much, much stricter. In commercial, you don't have a lot of the same protections.
Yeah.
So you can just go lock your commercial tenant out.
Yeah, absolutely. Under the property code, it's 93, Texas property code 93.002. You really just have to give, if the commercial tenant is delinquent on rent, you just give them a notice, and you don't have to give them the key back until you lock them out, and you don't have to give them a key back until they make a payment, which is great. Much more efficient. That works really well if you have some suites where it's easy and practical to lock someone out. It doesn't work so well if, for example, you're leasing out a car dealership, okay? Because the tenant has all his cars on the lot and they've got different points of entry. You can't practically lock out the tenant from the car dealership. You can try to down to car dealerships on Sundays. They're all closed on Sundays. And you see how they put the little arms down. You can still walk the lot on Sunday, but you're not going to be able to drive your car in there because they've got the little bars up. You can lock that, but the guy's just going to cut it and operate his business. Or at a gas station the other day, and you can't really lock the guy out of a gas station too easily. In those cases, an eviction is probably the more appropriate way, even though it is commercial. Now, why doesn't it work well for residential? And in fact, you do have to do an eviction for residential. Do you happen to remember? You can, in fact, do a lockout. Do you remember what kind of the why that nobody ever does it?
Yeah, you can. And a lot of people call us, they want to do that. Maybe a simpler time before you and I were lawyers, maybe landlords used to do that and withhold the key until someone paid rent, or say, oh, sorry, you're out on the street. But yes, the property code now does not allow you to go anywhere near that. If you lock someone out, you have to have someone, I think within an hour, maybe two, but it's certainly not more than that. If the tenant calls you and demands a key, you have to either deliver them a key at the unit or like at the management office. And no matter what time of night it is, you got to be on standby and ready to deliver it. So It's just not worth it to the landlord to put that burden on their like apartment complex manager to say, if they call, you got to be ready at 2 a.m. to go deliver them a key because we locked you out, but we have to give you the key.
No,
it loses its efficacy.
Yeah, exactly. It's section 92.0081 F like Frank, or F like Franklin Roosevelt. And there's no point. The tenant says, hey, give me a key. And they don't even have to pay rent. So it doesn't work. I used to have a buddy years and years ago, and I talked to him about, hey, how's your eviction? Have you ever heard of, oh no, Phil, I never do any evictions. I just go to the front door, and Phil, these properties are in the hood, and I just take the door off.
You definitely can't do that either.
No, but it worked. I'm gonna tell you, he never did an eviction. So he got his rent paid.
That's same thing. You can't turn off their heat,
No,
take the deadbolts off. You still have to allow them to protect themselves.
can't.
We do not encourage that.
No, as lawyers, we do not encourage self-help, but he never did an eviction. I'm just gonna put that out there. All right. That brings us to my favorite part of the show, Rant and Rave section. This is called the Restore Trust in Congress Act. And basically, I'm going to give this to you in a nutshell, Chris, okay? If you're in Congress, Senate or House, you and your family can no longer trade stocks or own stocks. You can buy ETFs or you can buy T-bills or whatever, but you can't trade stocks. What do you think? Love it, hate it, don't like it, indifferent?
I don't know enough about it to have a strong opinion. I don't like corruption. I do know that there are some safeguards in place, like they have to disclose what they're doing. I don't know how far in advance they have to disclose their trades. So I feel like if you're a member of the public and you think MTG or Nancy Pelosi are making too much money, you could follow their trades and you could just tag along with them. But I don't like corruption, and I'm sure that's what this is aimed at stamping out. If they have inside information, you certainly don't want the appearance of impropriety. I'm just not familiar enough with the safeguards already in place, whether it's good enough. Obviously, people don't think it's far enough. So tell us your thoughts.
Let me see if I can sway your opinion. Tell me if this doesn't sit right. I don't like, I get it. No one likes corruption. Senator Burr, Republican, North Carolina. I don't know if there's any relation to Aaron Burr there or not. I doubt it. In February 2020, just before COVID goes public, he sells everything. And all of his equity holdings, he sells $1.7 million. And then the market promptly crashed. So that's pretty bad. Don't you agree?
In the world of examples, no. That's one of the... So this isn't a personal attack. That seems like a bad example because we knew COVID existed.
No, we didn't, Chris, at the time, we didn't know how bad it was. He received confidential briefings. He was the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He went out, got the briefing sold before we all thought it was a cold, the common cold, right? Or like the flu.
But there was still debate over what was going to happen. There were still arguments. There were still trade issues, supply chain issues. I'm sure there are people who thought, oh, no, this is bad.
Okay.
This is going to kill the world economy.
Okay.
And that brings me back to my other point, though. How are they able to just go trade and then say they did it? Or do they have to disclose it prior to the CEO of, and if he wants to sell all stock?
I don't know.
He has to say it.
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't think it's quite those. It's nowhere near the standards for insider trading. It's nowhere near those standards. You talked about MTG. You're not a big news guy. I'm surprised you've been following her. She's been in the news a little bit recently because she's gotten crossways with Trump, but she made a trade, like a $300,000 trade, just pocket change, technology and apparel shares 90 minutes before Trump announced a pause on tariffs, which obviously caused the stock market to go up big time. So
yeah, stuff like that is a lot more eyebrow raising to me. If you know that specific policy is going to be enacted, COVID, it sounds harder to sell because I don't think Biden knew what policy was going to be enacted. Nobody knew what was going to happen. So that was a big debate for a long time. But if, hey, the FCC or the SEC is going to nix this merger, that's a big deal. Okay, this merger is going to get shut down and someone goes and trades on that information. That doesn't sit right with me, and it shouldn't sit right with anybody.
Yeah. Now, this is the big one. This is every time you turn on Fox News, and this comes up, this is what they're talking about. Nancy Pelosi, okay? Her husband, I think she's been a diversified portfolio. Her husband, Paul Pelosi. You remember Paul, the guy broke in and beat him up or something like that, her husband?
I remember that story.
Yeah. Several controversial, sort of well-timed purchases, multi-million-dollar investments in NVIDIA and Google. He always seems to be in and out at the right time, okay? And over their 37-year career, I think Paul has amassed, or their family has amassed $130 million in stock trading profits. And they have a 17,000% return compared to the average S&P return of 12%. That's the one that was crazy. I heard I think it was a congressman or a senator said, look, if you're that good, you need not to be in Congress, right? You need to go be on Wall Street if you're that good.
That's pretty big of a statistical outlier for someone if they don't have inside information.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like when I would play Monopoly with my family, and I'd always roll the dice in a way where I got the number I wanted, and they started to make you roll out of a cup. So you're not gonna land on what you want to land on that consistently. Okay.
I can't believe you did that.
It was a dark time in my life. Okay. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silverman. Chris Heald has been my co-host today. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice. And this has all been for entertainment purposes only and not investment advice either. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com and tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great rest of your week and Thanksgiving.